Have you ever noticed how we tend to look at the past like it was a completely different planet? We see the marble statues, the dusty ruins, and the Stoic paintings, and we assume that the people who lived there must have been fundamentally different from us. We think of them as these stiff, legendary figures who spent their whole lives talking in epic prose and worrying about the gods. But here's the true hidden history behind the Roman Empire. If you could step into a time machine and walk down a street in Rome in the year 100 AD, you wouldn't feel like an alien. You would feel like you were in a slightly louder, slightly messier version of New York, London, or Tokyo. You see, history isn't about dates and kings. It's about human behavior. And human behavior hasn't changed in 2,000 years. The Roman Empire wasn't just a period of time. It was a mirror of exactly who you are today. From the way you check your notifications in the morning to the way you complain about your boss, the Romans were already doing it. They were driven by the same social comparison, the same dopamine hits, and the same daily anxieties that keep you awake at night. Today, we're peeling back the marble facade. We're going to look at the psychological blueprints that prove why an ancient Roman lived exactly like you.
1. The psychology of the scroll. Have you ever wondered why you feel the need to know everything that's happening the second it happens? In the modern world, we call it doom scrolling. We wake up, and before our eyes are even fully open, we're checking news feeds, social media, and group chats. We think this is a byproduct of the digital age. It's not. It's a biological drive for social information gathering, and the Romans were addicted to it. Long before Twitter, Rome had the Acta Diurna. These were daily gazettes carved into stone or metal and placed in public squares. People would crowd around them every single morning to see who got married, who died, what the latest political scandal was, and, most importantly, the results of the latest gladiator matches. Psychologically, this is the availability heuristic in action. Our brains are wired to believe that the information most readily available to us is the most important. The Romans didn't have smartphones, but they had the same FOMO, the fear of missing out. If a Roman merchant didn't know the latest gossip from the forum, he felt socially irrelevant. He felt disconnected from the tribe. When you feel that itch to check your phone, that's not modern technology talking. That's your inner Roman, desperately trying to ensure you still belong to the pack. We haven't changed the habit, we've only changed the screen.
2. The trap of social comparison theory. Here's something you might recognize: the pressure to look like you've made it. Today, we do this through Instagram filters, expensive sneakers, and the cars we park in our driveways. We are constantly measuring our worth against the people around us. Psychologists call this social comparison theory. We don't just want to be successful, we want to be more successful than our neighbors. In ancient Rome, this was a national sport. If you were a middle-class Roman, your entire life was defined by status anxiety. You lived in an apartment building called an insula. These buildings were often death traps, shoddy construction, prone to fire, and freezing in the winter. But even if a Roman was struggling to pay rent, they would spend their last coins on a clean white toga and a specific type of ring to show they weren't at the bottom of the social ladder. They would hire professional mourners for funerals just to make it look like they were more popular than they actually were. They were obsessed with clout. Think about the last time you bought something you couldn't really afford just because you didn't want to look like the poor friend in the group. That's the exact same emotional trigger a Roman felt when they spent their savings on a fancy dinner party just to impress a local politician. We are still trapped in the same loop of seeking external validation to mask internal insecurity. The Roman dream and the American dream are built on the exact same psychological foundation, the desperate need to be seen. 3. The shared struggle of the daily grind. We often romanticize history as a time of leisure or grand adventure. We imagine Romans lounging in baths all day or marching across Europe. But the reality for 95% of people was the daily grind. If you hate your 9 to 5, or if you feel like you're stuck in a cycle of work, eat, sleep, repeat, you are experiencing the exact lifestyle of an urban Roman. The Roman economy was the first hustle culture. Most people were self-employed artisans, shopkeepers, or laborers. They woke up at the crack of dawn, driven by their natural circadian rhythm because artificial light was expensive, and they worked until the sun went down. They faced the same learned helplessness we see in modern employees. When the price of grain went up or the emperor decided to devalue the currency, the average Roman felt just as powerless as you do when you see inflation hitting your grocery bill. They dealt with micro-stressors constantly. They had noise pollution from wagons rattling over cobblestones all night. They had Karens, though they called them something else, complaining to the local authorities about shop prices. They even had the Roman version of fast food. Romans rarely cooked at home because their apartments were too dangerous for fires. Instead, they ate at Thermopylae, the McDonald's of the ancient world. When you're standing in line for a quick lunch because you don't have time to cook, you are repeating a human behavior that is 2 millennia old. Your stress is their stress. Your rush is their rush. 4. Emotional intelligence and the need for spectacle. Why are we so obsessed with reality TV, violent movies, and celebrity drama? Psychology tells us that humans have a negativity bias. We are naturally drawn to high-stakes, high-emotion situations because back in the wild, paying attention to danger kept us alive. In Rome, this bias was fed by the games. We look at the Colosseum and think, how could they be so barbaric? But we have to realize that the Colosseum was just the world's first high-definition television. It provided the same parasocial relationships we have with influencers today. Romans had favorite charioteers. They wore their colors. They knew their stats. They got into heated arguments at bars about who was the greatest of all time. This was a form of emotional regulation. The life of a Roman was hard, uncertain, and often boring. The spectacle allowed them to offload their personal frustrations onto a grand stage. It's the same reason we watch a 2-hour action movie after a bad day at the office. We need to see someone else win or someone else struggle, so we don't have to focus on our own problems. The Romans didn't go to the Colosseum because they were monsters. They went because they were bored, stressed, and looking for a hit of dopamine. The exact same reason you spent 3 hours on YouTube last night. 5. The search for emotional independence. Perhaps the most striking similarity is how Romans dealt with their mental health. They didn't have therapists, but they had Stoicism. Marcus Aurelius, one of their greatest emperors, wrote a book called Meditations. It wasn't meant for the public, it was his personal journal. And if you read it today, it sounds like a modern self-help book. He writes about how to deal with difficult people, how to handle imposter syndrome, and how to find peace when the world feels chaotic. The Romans were pioneers of emotional independence. They realized that they couldn't control the empire, the weather, or the economy, but they could control their own reactions. Today, we call this cognitive behavioral therapy, or CBT. It's the leading psychological treatment for anxiety and depression. We think we've discovered something new, but we're really just rediscovering what the Romans learned while sitting in their gardens 2,000 years ago. They were struggling with the same existential dread we feel today. They wondered if their lives mattered. They wondered why they felt lonely in a city of millions. They were looking for the same mindfulness that we try to find through apps and meditation retreats. When you strip away the togas and the Latin, what's left is a person who looks exactly like you. History isn't a long line of progress where we become smarter and more evolved every century. It's a circle. We are using 21st century tools to solve first century problems. The reason history is easy is because history is just the study of you. It's the study of how humans behave when they're crowded together, when they're chasing status, and when they're trying to find a little bit of happiness in a noisy world. The Romans weren't ancient, they were just people. They were parents worrying about their kids' futures. They were workers complaining about the heat. They were friends laughing over a drink. The next time you feel overwhelmed by the modern world, just remember, someone in the year 100 AD was feeling the exact same thing. They survived it, they built a civilization that changed the world, and then they went home and complained about the traffic. You aren't alone in your struggles. You're just the latest chapter in a very old, very relatable story. If this realization made your day a little bit easier, or if you finally see the hidden side of the past, then we've done our job. History isn't something you memorize, it's something you feel. If you want to keep decoding the human behavior hidden in our past, hit the subscribe button and join us for the next one. We're just getting started. Until next time, remember, the past isn't behind us, it's right here in every choice you make.